Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining on this beautiful Wednesday. My name is Jahan Casey. I am Haida from Skidegate Indian Band, but I am thrilled to be coming to you today from the beautiful territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam Nations. This morning's webinar on decision-making and engagement, doing it remotely under the current circumstances. We're pleased to bring to you as part of our Webinar Wednesdays series from the First Nations Public Service Secretariat. This is part of a series we do, which is focused on First Nation to First Nation learning through our mentorship program, where we bring on individuals who are working and taking on some of the challenges that so many First Nations are taking on in BC to share their successes, lessons learned, what they've gone through. So as we get going, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me. If you want to come on down at the bottom of your screen, we'll do some logistical items. Down at the bottom, there's a chat function. Feel free to jump in and say hello and let us know that we're all coming through. There's also a Q&A button. If you click on that and type in your questions as we go through, we will try to answer as many as we possibly can. We usually run out of time for all of the questions. If we do, we will encourage you and our panelists today, our speakers, to go into the First Nations Public Service, First Nation Administrators Network, actually, Facebook group, where you can share information, ask questions, and our panelists will be able to share additional information we didn't get to on the webinar. Last administrative detail, we are recording this because we will be sharing it to all of our social media accounts and for anyone who wasn't able to join. And that's about it. I hope you have a wonderful discussion today. I do have to apologize. We were intending to have two individuals join us today. The first who is here, I'm so pleased to introduce Collette Sunday from Upper Nicola Band. She has been a member of our Band Administrators Advisory Committee with the First Nations Public Service Secretariat for, oh my goodness, Collette, 2 years now? So we're happy to have her. Graham Gillies, who was supposed to join us from Kwikwetlem Indian Band, is, or Kwikwetlem First Nation, my apologies, is tied up with a community emergency. We hope all goes well. Graham's community, Kwikwetlem, is dealing with a land code vote this week, which he was going to speak about, but has also made, I'm sure, his life pretty chaotic over the past little bit. So he is desperately hoping he can join us. If not, we have Collette, who will share the story of Upper Nicola Band, who went through an election virtually just after the pandemic started. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Collette to tell about her story. And if Graham joins us, we'll just be thrilled. And if not, we'll ensure to have Kwikwetlem share their story at a later date. Thank you all. And Collette, welcome. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So I Hospahalt and Shai Squeeze Collette Sunday. I'm the band administrator here at Upper Nicola, otherwise known as God's Country here in Spachman. We're enjoying a beautiful spring morning here. We've had our fair share of rain, and thus I chose this background on this PowerPoint that I put together in the last hour. I typed out my notes on my phone last night, transferred that to this PowerPoint. So I just wanted to share our story around virtual engagement and decision making here at Upper Nicola Band. So for those of you that may not know, Upper Nicola is one of the 7 Okanagan communities within the Okanagan Nation in Canada. We also have relatives south of the border, and we are a community of approximately just under 1,000, and we have some new experience around engaging our communities and utilizing technology as we move forward with some decision making. So with that, I'm just going to see how I can take this off my screen. Okay, so in January 2020, Upper Nicola Band made amendments to our custom election regulation. So we've traditionally had the custom code, and we elect our chief and council to a 3-year term. And in January, amendments were made to our custom election regulation. And one of those amendments was to allow voters to vote electronically. So we, prior to even the COVID-19 coming, we already had made a decision in the community to allow our members to vote from a distance. So we made the changes in the custom code and we started to roll those out. So in our election schedule, you will see that our election was scheduled to take place on Saturday, March 21st, with the advance poll taking place on March 14th. So that was 1 week prior to the 21st. So we had rolled everything out according to the election regulations, and then right after the province declared a state of emergency for the province of BC, Upper Nicola Band Council declared a local state of emergency due to the pandemic or coronavirus COVID-19. So that was declared on March 18th. So we are now on day 48 of responding to this local emergency, and having the election was just one of many things that we've had to work through in the last 48 days. So the polls on the advance poll day and the election day were open for in-person voting as well as electronic voting. So how did we do this? We engaged One Feather, a company out of Victoria, and we had asked them to be our electoral officer. And so we actually had set this up previously to the election 2020. So in our code, the vote count is scheduled to take place the day after the election. So in this case, it would be March 22nd. So the polling stations were open on March 14th and March 21st in person. So we have two reserves that people reside on, Spachman and Kolshana. People could vote from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in person, and then also we had electronic voting opening from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on those two dates. And then as written in our election regulation, the day after, the Sunday, typically we would gather in our gymnasium and people would witness the count. And we knew that would probably attract at least 50 people. And with all of the new guidelines or the recommendations that were coming down from the province of BC, the chief medical officer, we knew that we couldn't have 50 people gather in one place. So what were we to do? So we needed to find a way that we were going to exercise transparency and accountability. And we didn't want to go outside of our election regulations. So we needed to find a way to find a safe alternative. So being a member of the FNPSS, the First Nation Public Service Secretariat Band Administrator Committee, I knew that we had participated on meetings on the Zoom application. So I actually purchased a Zoom account for the band, thinking that that would work to broadcast the count, but I realized that was not the right platform. So there's different Zoom accounts that you can purchase. So I just purchased the most basic one. And then I was working to troubleshoot that to find out, okay, how can we make this work? I wanted it so when we did the count of the election, people would be able to witness it, but they wouldn't really be able to make comments. So I wanted to have a one-way conversation. So it was a bit of a learning curve, definitely. And then I reached out to Jahan at FNPSS probably on Friday, and the count had to happen on Sunday in between all the emergency environment we're operating in, and asked if he could have access to the FNPSS Zoom account for a couple of hours. So did a bit of training with Selena, and then passed that on to our tech person in the office, our admin assistant. She was quick to pick it up. And we got the address and we sent that out to One Feather, who put that onto their webpage. So if you want to know more about what One Feather does, they definitely have all the information you need to see on their webpage. They can provide demos for you and up-to-date information. So what we had done is One Feather would post information on their website, and we would post all the same information on our Facebook account as well as our webpage. So we noticed most of our members are familiar with Facebook, and that's the platform that they're most comfortable in using. And so anything we had to do with the election, we brought it through that Facebook page. As well, we would send it out to our email distribution list, to all staff, to council, to our members that we send the newsletter out to. So we just found every way possible to communicate with our members and put that out there. And on the One Feather page, they said at any time you can call the electoral officer and ask any questions. So we just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page as the electoral officer. They did say prior to the COVID, we were the last in-person vote that took place. So that was on March the 21st, 22nd. So after that, I think everything's been virtual for them ever since. And so we scheduled the count to take place on March the 22nd. We had to have a third-party verifier to come in and verify that the count was being carried out in a transparent, accountable way. So we had the chief from Upper Nicola Band come in and do that, serve as that individual. And so we had the electoral officer, the deputies, and 2 assistants that we had from the band come in and do that. So it went off without a hitch. And so we just wanted to ensure that whatever practices we were taking, we're going to ensure we stayed within the custom election regulations, and it did. So everyone understood that there were restrictions that had to be followed, and it kind of moved without a hitch. So in saying that, the UNB election 2020 was actually the second time that we utilized this electronic platform for our electors to vote. So back in 2019, the band held a referendum to seek direction on ratification of an impact benefit agreement. So while the negotiating team for the band was putting their final efforts forward, the chief and council wanted to seek direction from the members. And so we know that a majority of our members live off reserve. We're a community of about 1,000. We have only just about 300 living on reserve, and the remaining living off reserve. So we knew that it may not be easy looking in the winter months, beginning or late fall, beginning of winter, for people to make their way out. But it was very, it was like a short turnaround time when we needed to get, when the council needed to get direction from the members. So they worked with their legal counsel and put information packages together. And we worked with One Feather to get this all coordinated. So what happens is that you get your electors list from Indigenous Services Canada sent to your electoral officer. They put that into their database, and as long as you have an email address, like an individual member will, as long as they have an email address and they know what their status number is, that will allow them to vote electronically. So it's done in a secure manner. We've utilized it 2 times, and we're quite confident that it has helped us to engage our community members in important decision-making matters for the Upper Nicola Band. So if you look at the results that we had here, I put a little table here together to look at how many people came out to vote in the 3 votes. So I'm going to refer to, if you were to look in the 3rd column here, election 2017. So as I mentioned, Upper Nicola has a custom code where we elect our leadership every 3 years. We have approximately 798, and we had, in our previous election regulation, you could either vote in person or you could do mail-in ballots. And total eligible voters was 798. We had 247 vote in election 2017, and that equals 30%. I didn't put that here, but that actually equals about 30% of our eligible voters came out to vote. And if you look at it, mail-in was very small. 2 people actually made the efforts to go in and get their ballots sent in by mail. It was quite a cumbersome process, where in our custom election regulation in 2017, or maybe it was like a 2010 regulation that hadn't been updated for many years, but in the administration of the 2017 election, it was such where you had to get your ballot verified by a third party, and that had to be a commissioner for taking oaths or a notary public, or else it had to be a judge. So it was really high level expectations, and then you would have to have it mailed in by a certain date to be received by the electoral officer to be counted. So it really wasn't, it was almost like a barrier for those people that lived off reserve that couldn't come in person to vote for the chief and council. So you'll notice in 2017 we had 245 people vote, and that's 99% of the electorate of the 247 that came in. So majority of people had to come in to vote. Only 2 people mailed their ballots in. If you were to look at the referendum that we held in 2019 in November, we had 150 people come out on November 2nd to vote on the proposed impact benefit agreement to give direction to our leadership. And we had 158 people, or 20%. And out of this, 64 or 54% of the votes came in electronically, and 59 people came in person to vote on one or 2 of the reserves, and that equaled about 60%. So no, actually that's the wrong number, isn't it? 55% should be. So if you look at it, there is actually more people in person that came in on the referendum as well. In the election 2020, there was more people that came in person, but it did provide the people with an opportunity, those people that couldn't be here in person, to actually register their vote or their opinion on what was being proposed by the leadership or by the community. So if you were to look at the latest election that we held, we had 326 people voting, or 40% of the people that came out to vote for their chief and council for a 3-year term. 48% have voted electronically, and 51 voted in person. So if you were to look at it, you may come up with the findings that, yeah, well, more people are still coming out in person. Well, I think it's a very new way of doing business. Most people that live on the reserve say, well, I'm going to just exercise my right by going to make my X, and I don't want to go through the exercise of creating an email address, creating an email account, because believe it or not, not everybody on the reserve has an email account. Or they don't want to learn a new process. They would just rather get in their vehicle or take a walk down the road and cast their ballot. So that was also fine, but those people that didn't feel comfortable in getting out in person were able to come out and vote. So you can see 158 people took advantage of this opportunity to register their vote for our leadership. So it's been beneficial to have the electronic voting in both the referendum 2019 and election 2020. More members voted as a result. We provided a safe mechanism for members to cast their ballot and witness the count in March 2020. And further to that, we are looking at other ways to continue to engage our members in the new environment that we're operating in. So not that we've really had the time to do it, but under the one feather, once you become a member or you utilize the services, there's other opportunities to get newsletters out via the registry list, because that's also been a challenge where we may have only been able to contact 50% of our people. We didn't know where the rest of our members were, and I'm sure that could be similar to most First Nations across the country. Where are our people? So having this opportunity, we've started to develop our database to understand where our members are, and even during the last 48 days in response to the COVID-19, via social media, we've been able to provide a bit of assistance to off-reserve members. And once the word went out, the Moccasin Telegraph works well. If there's any supports to be coming to community members, cousin, auntie, uncle, we'll pass that message on, and they've communicated with the band. And now we have more contact with our community members than we ever have. So yeah, that's in a nutshell how we utilize electronic voting and are working with our members to have decisions made in the environment we're living in today. So looking at...
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Collette, keep going.
Yeah, so I'm just open for any questions if there are any.
Perfect, thank you. And I was going through the chat as you were talking, and there's been a number of questions, as well as I wanted to just share Shelley indicated, she's from Dididat, and she indicated that they successfully did a mail, in-person, and electronic voting for their land code in September. Which they'd also done a mail and in-person, a more traditional vote for council in July of 2019. And they got over double the votes for the land code than they did in council. So I think that's another example of, you know, successful electronic voting, and that it will really help with communities. And since Shelley was kind enough to share her story, I will go ahead and ask her question that she has asked that was a technology glitch. Her system froze for a second, and she didn't get the reason that, Collette, your individual Zoom account wasn't sufficient to broadcast the election results. Can you just recap that very quickly, and then we'll go to the other questions?
Sure. So from what I understand, just the basic account that I had purchased did not have the capacity to have a webinar. I think it's more so to host a meeting. So I don't remember what the challenges were, but we wanted to have the count so that we would not have interaction happening. So it wasn't going to be about a question and answer period when we were doing the count. It was more like just broadcasting it out and advising the members what the results were. So I know that being a new Zoom account owner, it was really new to me, and I know Zoom finally reached out to me probably after the account and said, hey, we can provide you some tech support, and that was kind of after the fact. So I was just kind of scrambling and just saying, what can I do? Who can I reach out to? So then I thought, okay, maybe FNPSS can help me out.
No, well, we were pleased to help you out, given how much help Collette has provided. And of course, you know, anytime a First Nation reaches out, if there's anything we can do to help, we will desperately try. I'm glad it worked really well. And yes, I think getting to know Zoom and all of these platforms is something that, you know, not just Upper Nicola, FNPSS, and all of us have been struggling with. So we did some crash course learning at FNPSS, and definitely not the experts, but have figured out how to do the odd thing here and there. And yeah, it's a learning curve. It adds an extra piece to everything we do. So we have a ton of questions coming in. I'll start with the first one. So did Upper Nicola Band decide that in-person and e-voting sufficed? And I think you actually answered this at the end, why mail-in ballots weren't also included in the process. So I understand they were just cumbersome. Yeah,
it was just too cumbersome, and we looked at other ways. So through like in our custom election code, if you want to amend it, you bring amendments forward to a general band meeting, and they would be voted upon there. So yeah, definitely it was too cumbersome to do the mail-in votes, and we could still see there might be challenges for our members that may not have the capacity of internet, email accounts, but the pros outweighed the cons in terms of moving forward with electronic voting rather than mail-in.
Perfect, thank you. And then we had a question which I'm sure is top of mind when people are moving to these electronic systems is, what about your elders? How did it work, and how did they handle the electronic system? In particular, because some of them probably don't have the technology, aren't comfortable operating computers. How did you support them?
Yeah, and I think that's where we had asked their family members to support them to get email accounts set up. And with the contractor consultant, they were actually open to helping individuals troubleshoot how to register to become a part of the e-voting. So we actually delegated that to the electoral officer if they couldn't have help from their family members. So there was only so much we could do at the administration level. We asked family members just to support them, and I really don't know how many elders have signed up for the e-voting. I really couldn't tell you in terms of the stats that I've seen.
Can I ask, did you get any complaints or concerns raised from elders or their families or anyone about moving to the electronic system?
I think no, I think for the majority, elders know that most of the younger people are the ones that are living away from the reserve for the most part, and they were happy that their family members were able to participate in the votes that took place.
Right.
I know that I think I walked into the polling station at 8 o'clock on the 2nd, on the 21st, and talked to the electoral officer just to check in, see how things were going. And he says, it was amazing. This one band member was trying all day to get registered, and they have registered and they have submitted their vote. So it wasn't like it wasn't an easy thing for everybody. It just depends how comfortable you are with a laptop, with your computer, setting up your emails. But some people were bound and determined to get the setup and actually get it done. So yeah, the electoral officer was helpful, as well as other community members.
Great. So someone has asked about the costs related to the One Feather system, and if you know of other providers out there.
I wouldn't say it's it is not, it does not come cheap. I'll tell you, I think traditionally when we had, like in 2017, I don't think we expended more than $7,000. And to actually utilize this platform was probably 2.5 times the amount of that. It was probably like in the ballpark around $20,000 to have the vote be carried out. But if you're thinking about having the opportunity for your members to have a say on your governing body, or a referendum that's going to be there for 30 years or forever, is there really a price tag you can put on that? So I think if you look at it in that light, it is an expense that you're going to have to cover from own source funds. And actually, in the case of the impact benefit agreement, I think they included that as a part of the negotiations as a cost to get out there and get the feedback from the community members.
I was about to ask, because I was assuming the for the election vote it was own source, but for an impact benefit, or
yes,
if it was anything related to a self-government or a treat or anything, I think with enough foresight it could probably be negotiated in to some of those agreements. So I guess there's a tip if you're negotiating those right now. Think about electronic voting costs. So we're going to help Sylvia, who missed the first part of this meeting, and I think probably most people would like a recap of this too. Did you have to, what did you have to add within your own, you have a custom election code, but within those codes at the band level to make electronic voting possible? What specifically did you do?
Okay, so we just added a whole section. We actually worked with the consultant, One Feather, to vet it for us to add a section. So we said we want to incorporate electronic voting. Can you write a section for us to put that in here? So I think we paid a little bit more money to actually have that amendment, but we wanted to make sure it was going to be soundproof. And when we implemented it, we weren't going to have any issues, because definitely we're not going to be the experts when it came to the electronic voting. They were going to be, so we asked them to help us amend that. And so we had a committee, the tribunal committee, and it was not only overseeing the election, but we asked them to oversee the update of our election regulations. So once the consultant put together proposed wording, they read it, reviewed it, made sure they understood it, and then it was approved. Then they recommended approval by Chief and Council.
That's great. And given your custom, I'm sure you don't know, or I'm guessing you don't know the answer if you're under the Indian Act election still, how to manage that. Yeah. So if that's the question that Sylvia was asking, if your band isn't custom, then maybe we can see if we can talk to Indian Affairs, or what are they called? Indigenous Services Canada now, and see if maybe we can add that question to our Facebook group after the fact for any of the bands that are not under custom. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Collette. The language that you use to add that, is that something that you'd be willing to share with the group?
And our custom code?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Well, I'll let you go confirm that. And again, maybe that's something we can add to our Facebook group if anyone wants to see the language that you were using. Although I'm assuming, again, like you said, One Feather's probably the expert in that case. So
I think so, and I don't know of any other company that does the electronic voting, but I think once you, like, I think you want to make sure it's broad enough so any company could come in and do it, but making it clear on what the procedures would be, because it was a bit like some of the procedures that One Feather may have utilized typically with other First Nations. We said that doesn't apply to us. You have to look at our custom code. So if you were to think about it, some elections, if you're doing online voting, they may have it where you have the polls open from the 14th of March to the 21st exclusively. And then I think that's a bit of a gray area, because if you were to read our custom code, we may get challenged if somebody says, how come it was open for 2 weeks when the polling station is only supposed to be open on the advance poll for 12 hours and then again 12 hours on voting day. So they said, well, we've never seen it like that. And I said, well, it's pretty particular in this, very particular in this policy, this regulation. So I'd rather us not to go outside of that. And the tribunal committee did agree on that point. And they said, maybe we can revisit that prior to the next election, but at this time, let's just keep it to those 2 days. So yeah, it'll be a unique situation for every First Nation, depending on what your custom code is right now.
Perfect. And again, the last question, I'm going to guess, Collette, is probably not something you're an expert on, but wondering if the referendum regulations would apply to FNLM bands. So we can also figure that out if you don't. I'm guessing you don't know that one?
Well, once we actually did our update to our election regulation, we started to think about an outcome that came from this election was that Chief and Council actually want to develop a referendum policy, because we do not have one. So we have a few one-off policies, like when we did the impact benefit referendum, we didn't have anything to refer to but our election policy. And then in our election regulation, and then in that regulation, it talked about how amendments come forward, or how you get feedback from community. But we have it in our strategic plan to actually develop a referendum policy.
That's great. I think you're probably going to get some requests to share some more of that, of those tools and templates, and we'll facilitate that if we can. We don't have any more specific questions sitting there. I don't think I've missed anyone. We did have a question about Zoom, which is not related to this, but someone was again asking about the different Zoom accounts. And like I said, I'm by no means an expert. Collette, they were asking which one is the best package to buy. I'd say you probably want to talk to Zoom. However, if you want to reach out to either Collette for her experience, I'm going to assume she'll say yes, because she always does, or us at FNPSS, if you want to send us an email at info@fnps.ca. We'd be happy to share what our experience has been with the different Zoom accounts, and what we think of the different platforms and the different add-ons and what's useful and not useful. But again, we're not the experts at either, just happy to share what we know. And we've done a lot of these now. So again, if there's something we can help your community with trying to do it remotely and trying to set up or getting access, we're happy to do that. So reach out to us. We're always happy to try to help. And with that, I'm going to say, is there any other questions coming in for Collette before we let her get on with her very busy day? I can see you're in your gymnasium, you're still in your EOC, so I'm sure you have a ton to do. I'm going to go ahead and just ask one question, if you don't mind, since I never get the chance to ask my questions on these webinars. For the individuals that were running for Chief and Council, I know the pandemic started and your emergency started sort of just at the tail end of your campaigning process, so when the election would have happened. So I assume they had still some more in-person election kind of time. But for, Chief McLeod being elected and sharing information now electronically, I'm assuming with the community, or for any of the engagement on issues related to the election, was there any particular way that you've managed doing that, either just before the election or just after?
I think the biggest platform that we have been using has been the UNB Facebook page. And we have, like, we're on reserve, we're circulating weekly updates via our newsletter. We're doing our best on our web page. That's always a challenge. And I know FNPSS hosted our communications officer that we have brought on board since the COVID-19 emergency started. We never had the opportunity to have a communications officer, and that's always our weak point. And definitely engaging community, that's going to be a challenge. And how are we going to be doing that when we're supposed to be gathering with our own pods, or six or up to 6 people? And so how are we going to convene community meetings? And I know there's a bit of uncertainty around, like, how safe is Zoom? How many people can get on Microsoft Teams? How can we convene meetings, general band meetings, and any community gatherings that we would be doing? So yeah, definitely in our restart plans, those are some things that we're going to be visiting for sure. But I think we have supported our chief in getting him, like, all of our council updates, but the chief has been active in giving updates to members on his Facebook account that he links up to the band account. So I think we took that learned lesson actually from, we had talked to him about it before, saying, check out what the AFN National Chief does. He does a monthly report, 20-minute, 30 minutes. You go on the web page for AFN, and he'll kind of give a high level update on what files they've been working on over the last month. And then every month they would do that. So that was always something we had talked about doing. And so we started, Chief McLeod's been able to start doing that as we've been in this COVID-19 response.
That's great.
Maybe one more thing that one thing that we are working on developing here, it's really new, is I learned about this app. So for some First Nations, I haven't really seen of any in BC. There might be, I'm not sure, but they've developed their own telephone apps. And we are looking at developing a telephone app for Upper Nicola Band members. So I just had a demo on it last week. It's a company out of Edmonton. And what it will do is it'll allow you to get important notices or updates to members. And it could be from any program that we're delivering. It's just, it looks like the opportunities are there on how to keep your members informed. So say you have a community gathering, or you have, like today we're having a food distribution. We're asking everybody for the first time to pick up their food box rather than us delivering it to their house. So we could be pushing a message out to everybody's cell phone that we have a number for, or their Wi-Fi with their email address, and saying, oh, remember to pick up your food in Colchana between 1 and 6 today. So we're hoping to move away from the paper updates to electronic updates. But then again, we have to consider our elderly population. How many of them are going to have a smartphone that can actually get a message to them? So with that, that's one thing we're working on developing, as well as we're working on providing Wi-Fi for every household on the reserve, where people, because that's our biggest downfall, is our communication. We've heard it from our members time and time again. You're doing a lot of great things, but we don't know what you're doing. You need to communicate better. So we're working on giving people Wi-Fi in their households at no cost on the reserve for those homes that we can actually reach, because we've actually accessed the Pathways to Technology program a couple of years back. And we have a number of radios that are just sitting here gathering dust. And we said, why don't we just provide our community members with the opportunity to have the technology set up for free. And if they have some type of device, they can start to get messaging from our offices and start to communicate amongst themselves.
That's great. And Upper Nicola is fortunate to be in a position where you actually have access to Wi-Fi and broadband. Of course, there's some First Nations that still need that. And my good friend from the Technology Council, I'm sure, could come on and talk about all of the work that needs to be done in that area. Two questions here before we go is quickly the name of the Edmonton company you were mentioning just then. I didn't catch it either.
Avia, A-I-V-I-A. So if you were to go on your smartphone like this, go onto your Google Play, and this is how I did it, because I actually heard it from one of our legal consultants that the Band Council works with. I went to the Play Store, And I just put in their First Nation app. And if you put that, you're going to notice this one company has actually developed a number of these apps for their First Nation communities. And not that I'm trying to make a pitch for them, but they are actually giving a good deal under the COVID-19 environment right now.
There you go.
So we started engaging with them prior to this. And then once I had seen a email from them saying, hey, you got an opportunity here, we're going to give you a discount right now. So one of the ones that they had demoed for us was like, I think there's First Nations in the Edmonton area that are taking advantage of this, as well as a couple in Saskatchewan and others, but it's AIVIA, Avia Design and Technology.
There you go. So perhaps if anyone else is using it, again, if you want to share, you know, your experience or other companies that you've found useful, particularly in our Facebook group, other First Nations can take advantage of that. And one more question, because we are actually almost at the end of our time. Was there a funding source? You mentioned Pathways to Technology as an initial resource, but was there another funding source you're using for providing Wi-Fi to every household on reserve, or is that mostly own source?
We're using the hardware from First Nations, the technology program there, or project or program, and then we've gone forward and asked our council to utilize the gaming revenues, BC gaming revenues, to help offset the cost to provide free Wi-Fi to our members. So that's how we're going to be providing our members that opportunity.
That's great, and you've just made me think. I mean, the BC gaming revenue is a new opportunity for the province, and I know that not all First Nations that were eligible applied for those funds from the province when it was released, and maybe it would be good to hear from other communities what they're using those revenues for.
Oh yeah,
we could think about that, because there's so many things you could do with that that extra bit of money. I'm going to go ahead and thank Collette for her time today, and I'm going to thank Graham as well, who I'm sure is, well, I hope he's dealt with his issue on his reserve, I think, or in his community. We all understand how that happens sometimes, and you have to do your job first and share on these after. So I wish him the best, and we will bug him in the future to share his story about his land code votes. I do want to take, since I have 1 minute left, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick promo. Like I said, Collette is on our FNPSS Band Administrators Advisory Committee. And this is a group of band administrators from across the province who meet regularly with FNPSS. We secretariat the committee and provide advice to FNPSS on our work plan, our strategy. They act a little bit like a board, an unofficial board, but in an advisory capacity. So they help to provide suggestions on what we should be doing. They tell me pretty bluntly when I'm doing something that's not very useful to band administrators. So if you are interested in helping to determine what FNPSS tackles in the future, we would love to have a few more members. We have a couple leaving, and we're going to be sending out something shortly to ask for individuals to put their name forward for that. So I hope some of you listening would perhaps consider joining. I'm hoping Collette would say it's a good experience.
Yeah, it's lots of fun, lots of fun.
She does get bugged to do these things fairly often. One more item, I just wanted to note that Chief Robert Joseph will be on our webinar next week to talk about reconciliation during a pandemic, a time of uncertainty, a time of change, to share his views with his years and wealth and amazing history of experience on what this has done to the relationship between First Nations and government in all of Canada, and what we should be looking at going forward. So please tune in for that. Again, we'll put this up on social media, and as we close out, there should be a survey that pops up where you can tell us what you thought was useful, not useful, what you want to see coming up. And I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday. And again, thank you so much. Hawa, Collette, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day in Upper Nicola.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.